Hi, my name is Amy Bouton. I'm the Public Information Officer for St. Tammany Parish Government. We are here today to give a COVID-19 update, and joining us today is Susan Bonnet-Bourgeois. She is the President and CEO of the Northshore Community Foundation. Susan, thank you for joining us by Zoom.
Thanks, Amy, for having me and for all that you and the parish is doing in these challenging times.
Well, thank you. And we want to talk about what the Northshore Community Foundation is, number one, for people who may not know about you and about the organization that you run and the resources you offer. So can you give people just a brief kind of overview of what the foundation is?
Sure. So ironically, our foundation actually started as an outgrowth of another disaster. After Hurricane Katrina, there was an immense amount of resources and philanthropic dollars coming into the state, obviously, to get to the impacted area. And the Community Foundation in Baton Rouge, actually the Baton Rouge Area Foundation, raised a great deal of money and wanted to distribute it effectively on the Northshore, and found that there really wasn't an organization serving this region that harnessed philanthropy and that sort of worked as an expert in that space. And so we got started in 2007 to do just that. So what a community foundation does is it works with individuals and companies and families and groups of people in a community that want to use their resources or raise resources to do good work. So when we're not in the middle of an emergency, that's what we do. When we are in the middle of a disaster, and sadly it seems that these very unpredictable things come around to us more frequently than we wish, between floods and oil spills and at any rate. So when we're in the midst of a emergency like this, the Community Foundation really shifts all its work and all its focus to raising dollars to be able to be redistributed to the nonprofits in the region that are doing emergency frontline work. And so that's really what we've been about for the last 7 weeks.
Okay, so and to talk about this COVID-19 current disaster situation, I know, and you know, the Northshore Emergency Relief Fund is something y'all have created. So tell us a little bit about the Relief Fund and the work that you've done to date, and what work will come out of that continually as we move forward.
So as soon as we realized the reality of this disaster, and frankly, the economic reality of the disaster, because obviously that's really, at least for our region, our hospital seems to be managing quite well the healthcare side of it. We stood up the fund to raise dollars to redeploy to those nonprofits. And what happened, interestingly, this was new to us in a disaster, is that at first we really didn't raise much money. And what we realized very quickly was that a lot of people, a lot of companies at the beginning were sort of holding on to their resources until they got a better feel for what this really meant for them personally and companies. And as we continued to deliver the message and reach out to some of the folks that we work with all the time that have funds, we very quickly began raising money. So that emergency relief fund immediately started making grants, first and foremost, to the frontline organizations providing food, emergency food and emergency supplies to people who either were vulnerable before this, sort of on the fringes and needed this kind of service, and then this made it that much more drastic, or people who all of a sudden find themselves without jobs and without income and without an ability to provide food for themselves and their families. So we started doing grant making immediately in that space. So today, and we have continued primarily with the emergency, that frontline emergency relief grant making until this week, where we started doing some less traditional grants for organizations that are all still very much working in COVID-19 relief space, but a little bit less traditionally. For example, so in addition to food banks, obviously the mental health workers and NAMI and all the work that NAMI is doing here, not just in their facilities, but how group therapy sessions have had to change, and technology they've had to step up their budget for technology. And so all these every organization, every nonprofit is now dealing with some type of COVID-19 emergency it didn't expect. Habitat for Humanity that builds houses now is having to give their homeowners forbearance on their mortgages, just like everyone else. So every nonprofit in our region is dealing with some reality of this. So we're making grants to them as well. We've made a total of about $340,000 in grants, in emergency relief grants, to upwards of 30 different organizations working in the space.
So for the individual who's listening who says, well, that's great, and how do I help contribute to the emergency relief fund? Can you kind of give an overview of how to do that? And then also, can we talk about the individual who may be in need and where they might go to access some of the help that these grants are offering?
Absolutely. So to your first question, the easiest way to to give to the fund is on our website, www.northshorefoundation.org, all spelled out. And that it's a really easy one-click. You'll be able to find it there if you would like to donate to it. We for just the matter of how community foundations function, don't do direct relief to individuals, mainly because of a lot of IRS guidelines. However, one of our most recent grants was because of a gift to us from Chevron, and Chevron actually asked us to find a way to get direct support to St. Tammany residents who need it. So we've partnered with Catholic Charities, the one serving St. Tammany Parish, Catholic Charities Northshore, and they actually have dollars for emergency relief for individuals that they case manage and can work with to help get them resources, whether it's a gas card, whether it's, so if there's direct emergency relief, that first and foremost is being done by our partners at Catholic Charities. But again, every organization, from the Northshore Food Bank to the Samaritan Center in Mandeville to Community Christian Concern and Good Sam's in Slidell, there are lots of organizations on the front line delivering that kind of work. And a link to those resources is on our website as well.
Okay, great. I also noticed that you have something called the Coronavirus Impact Forum on your website. So can you talk a little bit about what that is and who that would be beneficial for?
So one of the things we stood up immediately before we had money to give out was we found nonprofits were having the need to communicate or to ask for things or to somehow get a message out. So we created a forum for nonprofits to be able to post, ask questions, talk about needs they had, but then it was also there for members of the community to be able to go post, well, I can do this or I can do that. So that forum is there in the event for those needs need to be communicated.
Okay. Also, I know that you have lots of resources on your website. Is there anything else that you would want to talk about before we part ways this afternoon, as far as Northshore Community Foundation and anything about COVID-19 relief and the emergency response?
Sure. I think, we've all seen that things are changing so quickly, and both public policy guidelines are changing. And just as an aside to that, I'm happy to serve on President Cooper's task force to restart our economy here in St. Tammany. But even doing that, we've seen, and Amy, I know you report on this every day, how quickly all those guidelines and actions as well as resources are changing. So what I would encourage people to do, if they have an interest in our work or sort of an interest in anything in this community service and philanthropic space, to first of all go to our website, and there's a place on there where you can sign up for our communication, so you always get that. And then also on any social media platform to follow us, because that's the most that's the quickest and most expedient way for us to get our message out of both opportunities and needs. So if people want to follow along with all things that are happening regarding this emergency in that philanthropic space, that's the best way to do it.
Okay, great. And we want to thank you for joining us. Thank you for the wonderful information. We also have all of the Northshore Community Foundation's links. We have them linked on our COVID-19 resource page, and we have shared some of their posts on social media. So we encourage everyone to take a look at that. Susan, thank you for joining us. And that's our update. We will see you next time.